Hello, everyone. Today we have the lovely Jerilyn with us. Jerilyn, go ahead and give us your story. When were you diagnosed with diabetes?
At the age of 10, which would be in 1986, um, I had grown up, my father was diabetic, so I knew a little bit about it, obviously, growing up with it. But yes, I was diagnosed at age 10. Um, Back then, we were put in the hospital for a week, told about exchanges and those type of things, and that's how we took our insulin doses. I believe I was started out on Humulin R and Humulin N, or an NPH back then, and that's how we were taught to dose, was by exchanges. Like one piece of bread was one exchange, and so forth.
Okay, and how long ago was this?
32 years ago.
Okay. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
How has their advice changed since then?
Um, well, as far as advice goes, um, back then they used the exchanges. Now they use like the insulin to carb ratio. So that, I don't know how similar it was, but I don't really remember a lot of my younger years as far as taking shots at school, or I don't really remember a whole lot about that stuff. I just remember the initial being taught, and this is what we go off of. I don't know if it was maybe in my later teens that they started talking more about the insulin carb ratio. When I started seeing an endocrinologist as an adult is when they started doing more of that stuff.
Did they ever give you any like nutritional advice?
Well, of course, it was always, back then it wasn't so much as far as how many carbs to eat, but it was, eat your meat, eat your potatoes, eat a serving of vegetables, and then for snacks, have your fruit or a cup of juice or stuff like that as snacks.
It's basically the typical eat healthy whole grains and fruit and all that
Yes,
jazz.
absolutely. Yep. The food pyramid is what they would preach. So
And
many,
did you fall?
so many helpings of each one a day. Mhm.
Okay, so the healthy, balanced approach.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, so did you follow this advice?
Well, when I was younger, um, I don't think I started to care a lot less until it got more towards like maybe the end of middle school, high school years, where it was, like the depression kicks in because your blood sugars are all over the place. And my blood sugars weren't very well controlled. Um, I don't really know what the reasoning for that is. I can't really say it was on the food, but there's no steadiness out of it. And it was just a lot of highs and lows and not knowing where to go. We didn't really have any local endocrinologists around here, so we had to travel to go because we're in a smaller town. So that was always something too, where most everything back then was done by phone or by going to visit them. We didn't have the technology like we do now.
Yeah, I understand. So you had some major highs and lows, and that affects your mood,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Yep. I started getting frustrated easily, and I was always very active in sports, and I had wonderful friends who were really supportive and everything, but after a while it just takes a toll on you and your body, and it just got to the point where instead of getting frustrated and um, I always felt like I was trying to fight figuring out how to dose and do all that stuff growing up. And I just stopped caring and said, you know what, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And didn't check as often as I should. And everything else that goes along with that teenage rebellion attitude.
So you're sort of burning out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was diagnosed at 10. So that took, well, maybe 5 years before that started to affect me.
No, I had a similar situation myself. I know what that's like.
Yeah.
How are you doing in these teen years as far as your health goes?
As far as health goes, my A1Cs were about 13. I remember going to my endocrinologist when I first started switching over to the adult endocrinologist and didn't see a pediatrician anymore. And I want to say my A1Cs were around 14 at that time. So they were pretty crazy, which back then I didn't know too much about it. I guess I just didn't really care. But the doctors never really preached anything back then. They were just, take more insulin, you need to do this, you need to do that. Never really told you to watch out for anything.
Did they ever try to blame you or anything like that?
No, not really. I don't really remember any blame being put on me. It was more of, we just need to take more insulin or do this, or no, I don't ever really not in my teen years anyway. When I started getting older, the endocrinologist made it more my responsibility and things that I needed to watch. But it wasn't until I was, probably an adult before they started doing that.
Okay. And as you're getting older and older, did you suffer any complications?
Yes, I do. I have stage 3 kidney disease, chronic kidney disease. I also have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I have Hashimoto's, which is with your thyroid. So I had a handful of complications.
Sorry to hear that. And up until when you found about low carb, how bad were you?
Well, it wasn't until, I had my daughter at age 24, and by the time she was 2, so that would have been back in 2003, I started on the insulin pump. I had to go through months of training for that, checking blood sugars, taking food logs, basically logging everything I did just to be approved to go on the insulin pump. And so back in 2003, I went on the insulin pump, and I had been on the insulin pump for 15 years. Back in 2000, just last year, I stopped the insulin pump and just started taking shots after my low carb way of eating. I only have to take 1 shot a day now. So that makes a big difference.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I've had a lot of positive things. Like, I feel better now. It was in 2017 when I was introduced to the low carb by one of my dear friends who's also type 1. She told me about Dr. Bernstein, and she had the Dexcom at the time and was showing me her blood sugars, and I was speechless. I just couldn't believe. I've never seen anything like it, And so she started telling me about some of his books, and, told me to read into it. And if I had any questions, let her know. And sure enough, I went out and bought his book right away and started figuring some things out on my own, asking her for help here and there. And so it was back in January of 2017 that I started following that.
That's fantastic. And how have you been doing since then?
Wonderful. For the first, from like January until November, I just kind of followed the low carb. I'd go on, I'd go off. It wasn't like too strict. And then I started following some Facebook sites, and I found a Keto Coach, my Keto Coach, Lisa Carroll. I found her in November of 2017 and just learned crazy amounts of information as far as how your body reacts to certain foods. I had a lot of inflammation from my kidney disease. And as soon as I started getting, I wasn't reading ingredients and stuff, I wasn't being too particular on that. And once I started buckling down a little bit more, things got a lot better. My inflammation went away. I lost a lot more weight and got more energy than I've had since my 20s. And there's just so many, the mental clarity and just so many amazing things have changed. Like I feel better now than in years.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned your kids earlier. How old are your kids now?
My daughter is 17 and my son is just turned 12. And they're both type 1 as well.
How are they doing?
Well, they're doing good. Their last checkup, their A1Cs are still in the 7s. So 7.8, 7.6, I believe. They're not quite into the whole low carb thing yet. They'll eat it when I make it, but they still kind of go off and do their own thing yet. It's just one of those things I hope they catch on to much earlier in life than I did. A lot more benefits for them.
I hope so too. And what's some of the low carb stuff you're making for them?
Oh, I do like low carb lasagnas. I use like rice cauliflower and pork sausage and the low carb marinara sauce with no added sugars and cream cheese, and they also like pizza, or I call them zucchini boats with pizza ingredients in them. And gosh, we have so much chicken cordon bleu and chicken Alfredo. And instead of using noodles, we'll just use zucchinis or just have it with broccoli, stuff like that. They'll eat the dinners just like they would normally, but it's just to keep them consistently doing it is hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, you can do your best to instill the low carb values in them, but they're teenagers and they're going to do their own thing in the end.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they watch some of our videos and learn more about this approach. We'll see about that.
Definitely.
Was it how easy was it getting started on low carb for you?
Like I said, I didn't go from eating normal to eating, extremely low carb right away. I just kind of gradually took it down where, like, instead of cutting to 20 carbs a day right away, I was, okay, I'm going to have 60 carbs today, see how I feel. And then I'd play around with the food a little bit and see what made me feel a little better or a little more full and how long it would last. And so I would say probably about 3-4 months before I got down to where I could eat like 20 carbs or less a day. And I use like my MyFitnessPal to calculate all my food just to see how I was doing. And I used that for quite a few months. So that was my first initial thing, was doing a lot of reading on what foods were good for you, what foods were healthy. Like, who would have known avocados are one of my favorite things now, So yeah, there's just a lot of reading, a lot of just trials and errors and stuff like that.
Okay. I like that you took more of a slow approach to it. I actually just dove right into it, and a lot of people, they do that and they end up experiencing a sort of a keto flu from that. So it must have been pretty easy doing it that way. Different strokes for different folks. So some would have trouble doing it slowly because you're still, sometimes it's easier to go on for some people. Sometimes it's easier to take it slow.
Yeah. And I can understand that. People have asked me for help, and this is completely up to you, however you want to do it. And a lot of people are like you, they want to just, let's do this and get it over with, and they'll go through what they need to go through. But yeah, there were times where I probably felt the keto flu, but didn't realize it until till I started getting into the coaching a little bit more and making sure I had all my electrolytes and all those types of things. But yeah, it takes a few months before I actually, got it right and figured out, hey, I'm feeling like this. Okay, it's time for some of this. But it's totally worth it.
That's great. And speaking of it, toying with it, what would you say is the best benefit you've gotten from doing low carb?
I don't know. I can't even just name one. Just having the more energy. Before eating keto, just eating the standard American diet, I was tired all day long. I'd wake up in the morning, and by midday at work, I would be tired already. I hated the feeling of constantly being tired. Hated it. And it was very frustrating. And I just couldn't believe how much energy I had, staying up late doing laundry or doing the dishes, or, just a little extra here and there, and still feeling wonderful about it. It's unexplainable. Like I tell my kids now, I said, I just want you to know what this feels like. I want you to know what it feels like to just have normal blood sugars all day long. And I mean, I can see it in them now, now I can look at them and say, okay, yeah, I remember those days. I don't want to feel those days anymore. And it's just not being tired and groggy and just always feeling like a pile of poo, I just am so thankful for not feeling that way anymore. And people are like, oh, how can you not cheat or not do this or not do that? And it's like, honestly, I just don't ever want to feel like that again. It's amazing if you give it some valuable effort, how you won't want to feel that way again.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And plus, I mean, for me at least, this might not be for everyone, but for me, the longer I've gone low carb, the less and less I really care for the foods that make me spike.
Absolutely.
Unless I crave them. And I've been on it for about 2 years myself, and it's just gotten to the point for me where I don't even see it as food anymore. I just see it as something that will mess up my body. Mm-hmm. I don't even want it.
Yep, I agree. I said, 2 years ago, or a little over 2 years ago, I would have done anything for a big plate of spaghetti, or, I love Mexican food. So I would have I had different cravings all the time, chocolate and this and that. And I could care less, honestly, if I ever had a piece of bread again, or if I ever had noodles again, or ice cream or anything. My kids look at me like I'm crazy, and all you gotta do is give it a try. I promise. I promise you'll feel this someday.
It seems so daunting. You're almost in a different mindset after you make the switch, and if you're not there, it's hard to fully understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, keep being the shining example. Hopefully your kids will follow soon enough.
I'm very excited about what you're doing with people. I think that is great. And I think that the change for the American Diabetes Association needs to come sooner or later. So, I think getting the word out there is just a very great thing that you're doing.
It's going to take a lot of work from all of us, but I think we can get there slowly but surely. We just got to be loud, loud and proud.
Yes, definitely.
That's the whole point of the video.
Yeah.
But anyways, speaking of being loud and proud, tell us, what do you think, for any diabetics watching this right now, what would you want to tell them? What is the number one thing you'd want to tell any diabetics watching this right now?
Yes, it's scary thinking about it. I mean, it's amazing how much food controls us. Before you looked at it, everything was revolved around food, and when you would eat, and when you would do this, and when you would do that. And it doesn't have to be that hard. It's very, once you get into the routine of it, it's very easy. First learning it, you're probably going to be overwhelmed, but it's worth every every bit of effort. And then it becomes just something very easy. Like you said, you don't even look at that stuff as food anymore.
Fantastic. And I wanted to bring back up you said you were suffering from depression, kidney disease, PCOS, Hashimoto's. Mm-hmm. How are all of those doing now?
Oh,
are they improved?
Yes. Actually, my kidney function, I can't give you percentages, but my kidney function has gone up. Before, I don't know if GFR, the filtration ratio for kidney function, I was in around the 30 percentile, and now I'm closer to 48 percentile. So it's still considered stage 3, but it's definitely gotten better.
Rather than progressed, yes. Which is a lot more than what other people could say, right?
Yes. And yes, my thyroid, and yes, the doctor actually took me off of a kidney prescription, and he's ecstatic. My nephrologist is ecstatic. He's just ecstatic about what I've accomplished. He's very supportive. As far as depression, my moods have completely changed. It's just amazing.
And your the PCOS and Hashimoto's?
Yep. The PCOS, that has gotten a lot better. Things have become a lot more regular for me, and no problems in that area now. And then the Hashimoto's, I'm on a lower dose now. I am still taking Synthroid for that, but I'm on a lower dose of that. And I also take the iodine drops. So that has helped immensely as well.
Great. Glad to see you've been healing from all those things. That's fantastic. So many of these different things, even doctors see as just a progressive illness. Much like diabetes, they see it as a progressive disease. It can only get worse and worse and worse. And the best you can do is stave off the symptoms with all these different drugs. And one reason I ask about that is because I really want to make it clear that a lot of these things can be healed if you're doing the right things. And it might take time. It might not be perfect, you know, but you can get better. It doesn't have to get worse and worse and worse. And I'm glad it's getting better for you.
Yeah, with my father passed away in 2015. He was 5 years old when he was diagnosed, so he had it for 57 years. I watched him go through dialysis. I watched him get amputations. It was terrible. And that was the whole start of, hey, we got to do something here. We don't want to end up like that, you know? And when my nephrologist first saw me for my kidneys, he said, "You are way too young for this. I do not want to see you have to go through dialysis." And so him being very supportive with this and encouraging is very helpful as well. But it is important to have doctors that work with you, because I've had a few that haven't. So that's important to find. I know sometimes if you're from a smaller town or something, it's a little harder to find that, or you might have to go further to get to that. But that's important too.
Has your endo been as supportive of it?
He's supportive, yes. He when I go there, he doesn't really ask a lot of questions. And I don't know if it's just, okay, you've been doing this a long time, your A1Cs are good. That's something that went down as well. Since I started, I was running between 6.8 for my A1C to 7.2, and now I'm down to a 5.2 for my A1C.
5.2, that's
so
fantastic.
Yeah, so that has dramatically changed as well.
Great. That's great to hear. And I mean, considering before in your teen years, you're in the 13s,
yes.
14s, bringing it back down to 5,
yes.
World of difference
yes,
right there.
A lot, yes, much. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's fantastic. I'd say that about covers most of the stories. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I guess, you know, if there's people out there that are still have a lot of questions, there's a lot of people out there online that you can get information from. I like I said, Dr. Bernstein's books I watch a lot of, and I love I don't know if you follow, but Dr. Ken Berry and his wife Nisha, and Jason Fung has a lot of informational stuff. John Lemansky. I mean, there are people out there that you can watch on YouTube as far as, getting a little more information about health stuff instead of just looking up a recipe or something. I ended up last year, I took a health coach course just to learn a little bit more about how your body, certain organs in your body react to things. And it's just amazing how much information you can get out there, and just to learn and help you, if you do want to go this course. But I would recommend at least give it a try.
Fantastic. Well, we'll leave it at that. And by the way, one of my favorite groups, of course, got to drop the plug for Type 1s, is Type 1 Grit.
Oh, yes.
Check them out if you don't know about them.
R.D. Dykman, yes, wonderful.
They're the best.
And they are,
for low-carb management.
They are how I found you, is when they posted a video of you. So, yes, Type 1 Grit, absolutely.
Yes, fantastic. Well, we'll leave it at that. Jerilyn, thank you so much for your time today.
You.
Thank you so much for giving us your story and telling us how you tamed Type 1.